Dr. Now spends every episode of My 600-Pound Life telling his patients the same thing.
She's at the point, I don't know if she's gonna live another 5 years. If you want to stay in bed and eat yourself to death, say so. At your current rate, you're gonna be dead in a year or less.
The people in this video should have been his success stories. They survived the surgery, shed hundreds of pounds, and walked out of his clinic reclaiming the lives he had promised them. And then they died anyway. It wasn't the weight that killed them, and none of Dr. Now's warnings could have saved them. These are the ones who beat the scale only to lose everything to an unrelated cause. And we're kicking things off with a fan favorite. Paul McNeil, Season 10. Paul was 35 years old, over 750 pounds, and just getting out of bed each morning was a fight. His legs were so swollen with lymphedema that every step hurt. He lived with his mom, who'd been enabling him for years, without realizing she was making things worse.
He was on the road a lot, so he wasn't always home.
Then when he was home, I tried to make him happy and fix what he wanted to eat.
Well,
But
you
I didn't
know,
see it before.
looking at his leg and you think he's happy now?
No, sir.
So this is the dynamic that we need to change, but I don't know how we're gonna change that.
But once Paul started Dr. Now's weight loss program, he stuck with it. He hit his goals month after month, dropping enough weight to qualify for surgery. He moved to Houston, got the surgery done, and kept losing, eventually landing at 300 pounds. And once he hit that goal, he proposed to his girlfriend, Jennifer. Paul quickly became a fan favorite because of how hard he pushed through his weight loss journey without ever losing that positive attitude. But tragically, just 2 months before their wedding, Paul was killed in a car accident on his way to work. The accident happened on September 21st, 2023, about 2 years after his episode aired. Paul was remembered by everyone who knew him as someone who made people laugh even on their worst days. He was days away from marrying the woman he'd fought so hard to get healthy for, but a car accident took him anyway. Lupe Samano, Season 4. Lupe was 39 years old and over 600 pounds, and by that point, she'd already spent over 10 years stuck in bed. Her weight had gotten so bad around her throat that doctors had to cut her airway open just so she could breathe.
There was so much fat around my neck. It was suffocating me. So they had to do a tracheotomy just so I could breathe while I was unconscious.
Her husband, Gilbert, had basically become her full-time caretaker, but he was also enabling her. And the damage of that enabling became clear the moment they met Dr. Now in 2016.
She's short of breath, she cannot walk, she cannot stand, she cannot move, she cannot breathe.
The drive down to Houston nearly killed her. By the time she reached Dr. Now's office, her heart was failing and she had to be hospitalized. But slowly, under Dr. Now's care, Lupe remained consistent with her diet, steadily losing enough weight to qualify for surgery and later for skin removal. While she was still recovering from surgery, she found out Gilbert had been messaging other women on Facebook. As bad as that was, it wasn't even the worst thing he did.
Gilbert was really insistent that we had sex when I got home. And afterwards, it felt like I had ripped open my sutures.
Is that mold?
The pain is so unbearable. I asked Gilbert to call an ambulance to take me to the hospital. And all he can think about is getting drunk.
5 hours in the ER. God, unbelievable.
Thankfully, Lupe left Gilbert and moved to San Antonio to live with her cousin. While there, she ended up reconnecting with an old friend named Andrew, which developed over time into a romantic relationship. Andrew ended up moving to Houston with her so she could keep working with Dr. Now.
So being in this relationship with Andrew is really nice. He takes care of me, and I'm really happy right now. Andrew and me have been talking more about getting married, starting a life, and having a family together. So that's why I'm going back to Dr. Now right now. Because I need to walk again and be finished with the program.
With him in her corner, Lupe went on to qualify for hip replacement surgery. By late 2019, she'd posted on Facebook showing herself at 220 pounds, having lost more than 400 pounds total. Then in early 2019, Andrew died. 6 years later, in September 2025, her sisters confirmed that Lupe had passed away too. She was 50 years old. No cause of death was ever officially given. My 600-Pound Life fans had followed Lupe for years, rooting for her through the abuse, the divorce, the surgeries, all the way to falling in love again. She'd done what almost nobody thought possible. And yet the weight that had once threatened her life the most wasn't the thing that ended it. If you've survived this far into the video, no pun intended, please take a quick second to subscribe to my channel and hype this video. It really does help small creators grow. Destiny Lachey, Season 7. Destiny grew up in foster care and had already been through a lot of trauma before her debut on My 600 Pound Life. She faced discrimination when she came out as gay and lost her brother before meeting Dr. Now.
I feel like all I'm constantly doing is just trying to escape all my depression and pain at this point. And food is the only thing I have to turn to do that.
By the time she reached Houston in 2019, she was over 650 pounds and was the first transgender participant to appear on the series. But from her first appointment, Destiny proved she was serious. Over the course of the year, Destiny remained consistent, got her weight loss surgery, and lost more than 200 pounds. Part of what pushed her forward was wanting to qualify for gender-affirming surgery, which meant she had to hit a certain weight first. After filming ended, Destiny kept the momentum going, eventually losing close to 500 pounds and becoming one of the program's biggest success stories. In February 2021, Destiny's sister passed away suddenly, a difficult tragedy for anyone to cope with. Almost exactly a year later, on February 8, 2022, Destiny died at 30 years old. No official cause of death was released, but her brother's public tribute and her last post hinted she'd taken her own life after a long struggle with her mental health. In her final posts, Destiny said she was grateful to have touched millions of lives around the world. She'd broken barriers on the show and inspired fans who saw themselves in her. But underneath, she struggled with mental health, which nobody saw until it was too late. Pauline Potter, Season 3. Long before Dr. Now ever met her, Pauline Potter was already famous. Guinness World Records named her the heaviest living woman in 2012, with her weight pushing close to 700 pounds. What finally got Pauline to Houston wasn't her own health scares. It was watching her son put his life on hold just to keep her alive. Even then, actually doing the work proved hard.
I haven't done a lot of activity in the last week because my stomach hurts.
I don't think you're getting how serious this situation is.
It took a strict 800-calorie diet to finally get her cleared for the procedure. But once she was discharged, the old patterns crept right back in. She also developed a painkiller addiction that led to a burst ulcer and sepsis.
Pauline, you have a bloodstream infection, okay, that is affecting your heart and affecting your kidney, and your blood pressure is down.
That was the wake-up call for Pauline. She showed up to every physical therapy appointment and worked daily on getting her body moving again. Eventually, Pauline qualified for skin removal surgery in 2019 and dropped to 223 pounds by 2022. In total, Pauline lost more than 400 pounds. Her social media posts from the early 2020s showed a woman transformed, smiling, noticeably slimmer. Then in January 2025, Pauline and her son Dylan were driving on a dark 2-lane highway at night when they hit a truck that was stopped in the middle of the road with no lights on. The crash spun their car around and left Pauline with broken ribs and serious injuries. Over the months that followed, she developed a blockage in her esophagus that made it hard to keep food down. Then she caught COVID on top of everything else. In November, she was moved into hospice care. Sadly, in the same month while in hospice, Pauline died at 62 years old. Fans who followed Pauline's story called her a warrior, someone who'd fought her way to a success story nobody expected. But a stranger's carelessness on the road undid all of it. Dottie Perkins, Season 4. When she started filming in 2016, Dottie was 34 years old, over 600 pounds, and raising 2 young sons largely on her own. Her oldest, Daniel, had cerebral palsy and needed round-the-clock care, and her husband had to work to support the family.
As overweight as I am, I have to get up every day because I have 2 kids that depend on me. Daniel, who is 12 and has cerebral palsy, and Landon, who is 1. I have to be here to take care of these boys. They need their mama.
By the time she'd get Daniel settled each day, she barely had energy left to care for herself. So fast food became the easiest way to keep going. Dottie knew she couldn't keep living like this, not with 2 boys depending on her. So she joined Dr. Now's weight loss program. She struggled at first, barely losing weight, but a controlled hospital diet helped her drop more than 70 pounds and finally qualify for surgery. After a year in the program, she lost close to 150 pounds. But then tragedy hit before she could enjoy her success.
She suffered a significant trauma last year with the loss of her son, Daniel.
True.
When he was born, the doctors told me he only had 5 years to live. I got 13 years with him because I never left his side.
And it would make sense that she's still dealing with her pain and loss. But if she's trying to avoid dealing with all that, her health is going to continue to suffer as she does more and more damage to herself.
Somehow, even after losing her son, she kept pushing forward and lost enough weight to undergo skin removal surgery. But once she was discharged, smoking reopened her surgical wounds and landed her right back in the hospital under Dr. Now's watch. Eventually, Dottie got back on track and got her weight down to under 300 pounds. But her health didn't hold. In the years since, she lost the ability to walk and was diagnosed with heart failure. By 2024, her family was struggling financially, and her last known Facebook post was a plea for help feeding her son. Barely a year later, in June 2025, Dottie passed away at 44. Dottie's story ended up sadder than most, and fans took it hard, namely for the sake of her youngest son and concern over what would become of him. Dottie survived years of setbacks that would have broken most people, but in the end, none of that fight was enough to save her. Charity Pierce, Season 3. When Charity first appeared on the show in 2015, she was 39 years old and nearly 780 pounds.
I'm embarrassed of my body. I don't want anybody to see it. I mean, I look completely different than anybody else, so I'm embarrassed of me. I know I look like a freak. From the inside, I feel normal. But when I see myself in a mirror,
I feel like some monster.
She was dealing with severe lymphedema, infections that kept coming back, and a body that looked like it could shut down at any moment. Weight loss surgery was her only hope for survival. So Charity worked hard under Dr. Now's program to be approved for the procedure. Over the months that followed, she lost enough weight to go through with both the weight loss surgery and later the skin removal surgery.
Surgery in Charity went very well. We took a 57-pound of fatty tumor off of her, and it's going to take a long time to heal.
Over the course of the next 3 years, Charity ended up losing more than 500 pounds, turning into one of the show's biggest success stories. But those years weren't easy. Charity found out her fiancé had cheated on her with her own sister. At one point, she overdosed on painkillers, serious enough that Dr. Now cut her off from further skin removal surgery. Charity pushed through anyway, and it paid off. But in December 2019, she announced that she had been diagnosed with kidney cancer. She had the kidney removed in early 2020, but went completely silent on social media with no updates since then. Then in 2026, her daughter Charlie shared a heartbreaking post on Facebook. Charity had spent her final 2 months in hospice care, battling lymphedema and fluid buildup in her lungs. She passed away early on the morning of January 27th at 50 years old. Charity came into the show with one of the most shocking bodies fans had ever seen. But in the end, her transformation shocked fans even more. It's sad that after all her hard work, cancer is what finally got her. By the way, if you're enjoying my content, please consider joining as a channel member. Perks include early access to new releases, members-only polls where you can influence the topics I cover next, and even entire videos exclusively for members. Go ahead and treat yourself. Dr. Now approves. Patrick Macon, Season 11. When Patrick's father died, grief hit hard, and food became the way he coped. By the time he went to see Dr. Now in 2022, he was over 650 pounds. Progress was rocky from the start. Patrick blew past deadlines, gained weight, and got called out for making excuses more than once.
What happened?
I've been sick. I had like the flu.
So people have flu, they lose a lot of weight, and they don't gain weight. Make better story.
No, I don't really have any excuses. I mean, I wasn't eating right.
So what is your objective coming here if you just plan to keep doing whatever you want?
But Patrick eventually turned it around, got his surgery, and finished his first year on the program at 531 pounds. Since then, Patrick basically vanished from social media, and his fans were left guessing why. The answer came in February 2023, when his wife Amanda broke the news publicly. Patrick was fighting gallbladder cancer. He fought it for 2 years, but a body already worn down by years of extreme obesity couldn't hold out any longer. Patrick died on September 17, 2025, at 46 years old. Patrick fought hard for every pound he lost, and fans rallied around him with prayers and support the moment they found out he was sick. Unfortunately, cancer cut his life short. Henry Foots, Season 1. Henry was a fan favorite from the very first season. He was 47 years old and 715 pounds when he first sat down with Dr. Now in 2004. His weight had already cost him his job as a commercial bus driver, but the reason for wanting to change was simple. He wanted to be lighter for his high school reunion. And over the 7 years the show tracked him, he lost more than 400 pounds, dropping down to about 270. But the journey to get there wasn't smooth. During his skin removal surgery, Henry's heart actually stopped on the operating table.
It was just like having an all-body experience. That was the life that gave me the hell. I wasn't ready for it.
He also lost his father during filming, but still managed to keep going. With his health finally on track, Henry went back to his old job driving a shuttle bus. But in November 2012, the same year his episode finally aired during season 1 of My 600-Pound Life, Henry lost control of the bus he was driving and tragically killed a woman on the street. Henry survived the crash and actually lived another 6 months after that. Then on May 16, 2013, he died at 54 years old. His cause of death was never made public. Whether his death was connected to the crash is still a mystery. Some viewers still wonder if guilt over the crash weighed on him more than he ever let on. Either way, he beat the weight that was supposed to kill him, and something else got him instead. Laura Ann Perez, Season 3. Laura was 41 years old and close to 600 pounds when she met Dr. Now. She was confined to a wheelchair and dependent on an oxygen tank just to breathe. She completely relied on her husband Joey for her daily needs. But he kept enabling her, making her condition worse.
Some of the things I do for her may not be good for her, like the sweets and other stuff, but she means the world to me. I love my wife a lot.
But it's hard to tell her no because I love her.
Meeting Dr. Now was the wake-up call Laura needed to change her life. But none of it came without a fight. During the bariatric surgery, doctors discovered that her liver and spleen were enlarged and had to remove 4/5 of her stomach instead of doing a standard gastric bypass. Afterwards, complications from the procedure left her with pneumonia and landed her in the ICU. But somehow she pulled through and kept going, eventually dropping to an astonishing 182 pounds. She divorced her scumbag husband Joey and later remarried a man named Eric. But toward the end of 2021, an obituary posted by a funeral home in San Antonio confirmed Laura had died on November 17, 2021 at 48 years old. No official cause of death was ever released. Laura pulled off one of the most complete physical transformations the show has ever seen, and fans still point to her as proof of what's possible. She eventually got the freedom she fought for. She just didn't get to keep it for long. James L.B. Bonner, Season 6. L.B. lost part of his leg in a quad bike accident, and that, combined with his weight, left him struggling to walk and in constant pain.
No one understands how hard it is to be over 600 pounds and missing a leg. Those two factors combined make getting around almost impossible.
LB was close to 650 pounds when he first met Dr. Now, and unlike a lot of stars on the show, he brought a genuinely positive attitude to a hard situation. He stuck with the programs, hit his goals, sometimes beating them, and eventually dropped all the way down into the 200s. He also got a new prosthetic leg, became more independent, and closed out his episode sounding genuinely hopeful about his future.
A year ago, I was living in my parents' garage, over 600 pounds and hardly ever leaving the couch. But I'm amazed at how much my life has changed for the better. My future ahead is bright. I'm excited about it.
But behind the scenes, LB was dealing with clinical depression, the depths of which the show never fully captured. Just weeks after posting a cryptic message to his fans, LB died by on June 2nd, 2018. He was only 30 years old. Years later, his family became the first of 10 patients to sue the production company behind My 600-Pound Life, claiming the rapid weight loss and lack of financial support afterward contributed to his death. If you want to know what happened with that, who was found responsible, and whether LB's family actually got justice, I broke the whole thing down in a separate video. If there's one thing that ties all of these stories together, it's this. Every single one of them is remembered for the fight, not the ending. Fans still call them warriors, inspirations, and still show up in the comments years later just to say they were loved. I'd love to know what you think too. Whose journey stuck with you the most, and why? And to catch up on the list of every patient from My 600-Pound Life who's died so far, watch this video next.